Chapter 4. "Good morning, sir," Mrs. White greeted Patrick as he passed her, on his way to the breakfast room. "I believe you will find several choices to your liking." She entered the room behind him. "You will see the cook has not forgotten your favourites." Indeed, there were several items of food that he favoured sitting on the table, near where his brother had always sat and his father before him. It should be his place now, but it would not be. Therefore, he moved the place setting to the first chair on the left. This is where he belonged. He was not claiming Ashmore. He did not deserve to sit in the place of its master. Mrs. White arched a brow and wore a look of displeasure at his choice of seats. He shifted his eyes to his plate as he sat down, and prepared to pour himself a cup of tea. He did not need Mrs. White's reproving looks to make him feel as lowly as a drunk, passed out in the alleyway behind the Rose and Crown. He had spent a great deal of the night pondering how he was failing his family and the staff. Was there something you needed, Mrs. White? He had no desire to have her watch him not eat what had been explicitly prepared with him in mind. He was both grateful and touched by the remembrance of what he preferred, and the effort to make his return feel more like a grand arrival, rather than a necessity of tragedy. However, he had very little desire to do more than drink a cup of tea. His appetite was gone, and having her standing before him, looking stern, was not helping it to return. Before she could reply, there was a clattering in the corridor, followed by a very feminine blast. "Who is that?" Patrick asked Mrs. White. He suspected he knew precisely who it was. Amanda had always favoured saying blast, when things did not go as planned, or she dropped one item or another. "We have guests." Patrick held Mrs. White's gaze, which did not waver. Was she going to tell him who his guests were, or was she just going to stand there, looking very much as his tutor had when the man discovered Patrick had hidden his ink? As the sound of a discussion in the hall entered the breakfast room, his housekeeper finally spoke again. "Mrs. Thompson and her daughter stayed the night. I believe Mrs. Thompson is leaving now, but Miss Thompson will remain for the time being. I did not think you would mind if I lent them a few of your mother's items for sleeping, so that their clothing could be presentable today." He stared at her open-mouthed as she walked toward the door. He was correct. That blast had been from Amanda. But why was she here and not leaving? "I could not turn Miss Thompson out when she was in the state that she was in last evening after you retired to your room." Mrs. White stood mere feet from the door. "The last time I saw her looking so distressed was 4 years ago." She tipped her head and raised a brow once again. "I know I overstepped my bounds, sir, but seeing as I shall not be in your employ for long, I find the overstep does not bother me so very much." He did not miss her meaning. She knew that he was not staying, and she was a great deal less than pleased. In fact, he was quite certain she was as angry as he had ever seen her. However, before he could plead that he was going to speak to her this morning, she continued. 4 years ago, that young lady nearly died." Patrick blinked. Amanda had almost died? "You will be polite to her, and see to it that she eats. It was her lack of eating from the distress she felt at your hasty departure that made her susceptible to the illness, which almost took her from us. You may remove yourself from those who care about you, for I assure you that many of us who have watched you grow over the years hold you in a special place in our hearts. But I, for one, will not tolerate your boyish behaviour causing us to lose Miss Thompson. She and her family have been a delight to serve when they visit." With that and a fierce glare, Mrs. White did what Patrick was so adept at doing, and left the room without giving him a moment to gather his thoughts and speak. Patrick was still attempting to sort through what he had just heard when the second wave of attack entered the room, looking beautiful, despite the dark circles that hung under her eyes. He pushed to his feet. "Good morning, Miss Thompson." "Is it good, Mr. Mullins?" Her reply was cool, like the edge of a knife. It appeared she had not lost her sharp tongue in 4 years. It is what one says. One says much that one does not mean. She gave him a pointed look as she took the chair across from him, and waited for a footman to bring her what she needed to eat. "I should like to know what you mean by that, but Mrs. White has given me specific orders to remain polite and to see that you eat." He pushed a basket of muffins toward her. If he remembered correctly, a cup of tea and a muffin were her preference for breaking her fast. Her lips tipped up at the corners as she took one of the muffins from the basket. "Are you not eating?" she asked, looking at his empty plate. He shook his head. I do not think I could if I tried. One should probably try so that one might prove the veracity of one's thoughts. He shook his head and returned the smile she gave him. Very well, I will try. He took a muffin, broke off a bit of it, and popped it into his mouth. It tasted of lightness and home for a moment, until he remembered that he was not home and had to reach for his tea to wash down the ash the muffin had become. I was correct. He pushed his plate away from him. I am sorry to hear it. Ashmore's cook usually produces very tasty food. She took a nibble of her muffin. It is not the quality of the food that is amiss. No? Then what is it? His eyes narrowed as she batted her lashes innocently. She knew exactly what was amiss. I do not wish to leave Ashmore. Then do not leave. She put her muffin down and looked him in the eye, begging him to debate with her. I must not argue. Mrs. White would not be pleased. She's not pleased that you're leaving, so in for a penny, in for a pound, as it were. Amanda leaned back with her cup of tea. He shook his head. I was going to tell her this morning. Amanda shrugged one shoulder and sipped her tea, waiting for him to continue. Mrs. White said you were staying with us for some time. She nodded and smiled. How long are you planning to remain at Ashmore? She shook her head and placed her cup on the table. I believe you said you would be here for the few weeks it took to complete the disposal of your inheritance or some such thing, so I cannot tell you more precisely than what you have told me. However, it would be greatly appreciated if you would give me at least a day's warning before we are to relocate to wherever it is we're going. Patrick reached for his tea, hoping that a sip of it would help his heart return to where it belonged, instead of blocking his throat and hammering in his ears. She was planning to leave with him. She smiled, broke off the tiniest bit of muffin and rose from her seat. You have not finished eating. Those were not the words he really wished to say, but in a panic he blurted whatever he had to so that she would not quit the room until she had explained herself. I am not leaving. She had come around the table to where he sat and patted him on the shoulder, before continuing down the length of the room to the windows at its far end. The frost fairies were busy last night, she said, glancing back to where he sat. Their decorations are so beautiful in the first light of morning. See how they sparkle? The frosty designs on the window were not the only thing to sparkle. The sun glinted off the copper of her hair and framed her face in light. Are the designs as beautiful in Canada? She beckoned for him to join her at the window. He shook his head. She was not going to let him ignore her. I have sketches of a few, he answered. I would like to see them. She sighed. It is a pity you had to transport all your things to England, only to have to return them to Canada when you leave again. We are going to Canada, are we not? It sounded as though that was what you planned when you spoke to Mother and me last night. At the risk of starting an argument and incurring more of the wrath of Mrs. White, why do you keep saying we are going? He asked. She blew on the window, allowing it to fog up with her breath, then with a finger traced a heart in it. My mother disapproves of me writing on the window like this. Your mother disapproves of many things. He was one of those things. Not so much as she used to. Amanda blew on the window again, before tracing another heart on the pane. She has agreed to allow me to go to Canada with you. She was not happy about it, but I would not be moved. I reminded her that you have established yourself in a profession just as she required 4 years ago before giving me her blessing to marry. Never had she once mentioned that you must live close to Kimpton or Lambton, or anywhere in Derbyshire for that matter. If you had taken up a different profession, I would have been moved to wherever it was that you practiced law or found a parish. She turned toward him. I do not care where you live, or what you are, as long as you are my husband. I will not live another day with my heart torn in half. I will not, Patrick. I simply will not. Patrick shook his head and blinked. He turned toward the window and then back toward her. Was she saying what he thought she was saying? Mother has gone home to prepare my things for travel. Later today she will, of course, send what I need for my stay here. But the rest should be crated up and delivered to Ashmore before you have made all the arrangements necessary to sell the place. I can help you with anything that needs to be organised or listed or the like. She was talking rapidly as she did when she was nervous. I don't know what tasks the selling of a home entails, but I am a quick learner and need only to be instructed. Then, when Mr. Dobney has called the banns, we shall marry. and everything will be all properly ready for our departure. No, not quite. Mother has a sister in town who is rattling about her townhouse, and either she can come to live with Mother, or Mother can go to live with her." She blew once more on the window and began to make another heart. "Then all shall be ready, as soon as Mother is settled with someone to keep her company." He saw her lips quiver and she blinked rapidly. She was willing to leave all that she knew and loved for him, no matter what his profession. No matter if he owned an estate or not. She was choosing him. And while the thought elated him, it also made him feel quite small for having questioned her motives. He grasped the hand that was closest to him. "You still wish to marry me? After all these years? After last night?" She nodded. "I am foolish like that." He smiled. Anyone else would have said a simple yes, but not his sharp-tongued Amanda. She would remind him of his idiocy while still accepting him. "I have never intended not to marry you," she added. "But my mother was right 4 years ago. We were not truly ready to marry. How would you have supported me, let alone a child? It was imprudent to think that we could survive on just the interest from my dowry and your allowance." She took his other hand and they stood facing each other. "That is what I attempted to tell you, but you did not hear me." She blinked against tears, but one escaped and slid down her cheek. "All you heard was my rejection. I could see it in your eyes. I have seen it in your eyes so many times when I have closed mine. Please say you will have me, and that I have not driven you away forever. Will you have me even if I do not sell Ashmore? Only if you believe me when I say that I would have you even without it. I wish only to be by your side wherever you are." Her lips tipped up on one side. "I do require now, as I did 4 years ago, that we be able to live comfortably enough to feed and house our children, and employ a servant or two, because to begin a family with less would, in my opinion, be imprudent," he finished. "As is selling my inheritance, if there is no reason to escape the pain of seeing you wed to another." He drew and released a breath that took from him the last remnants of the heaviness, which had settled into his soul upon realizing yesterday that he must leave both Ashmore and Amanda. "I am likely not good enough for you, but if you will have me, and if you will be content to be the mistress of Ashmore, then I shall daily endeavour to prove myself worthy of you. Will you forgive me for my foolishness and agree to be my wife? For I, like you, have no desire to live my life with half a heart, and mine needs you to be complete." She dropped his hands and turned toward the window where she blew on the glass, traced a heart in the fog, and quickly scrawled yes before the vapour vanished. When she turned toward him, he pulled her into his arms. His heart beat wildly in his chest. From tragedy and the deepest cold hopelessness that a soul could feel had arisen something of great beauty, something that he did not deserve, something that he would cherish for all time. "I love you, Amanda." He pulled back to smile down at her. "I have always loved you for as long as I can remember, even when I was pulling your hair and teasing you with frogs, and I will love you for infinitely longer." She reached a hand up to stroke his cheek. "Until the frost fairies forget to paint on the windowpanes of Ashmore in the winter." He looked up toward the ceiling. It was excessively unmanly to cry, but even rolling his eyes upward or blinking could not keep his tears from falling. "Even longer than that," he answered. Then he captured her lips with his and attempted to pour every ounce of his love into that kiss. 4 years of separation overtook them. His hands roamed up and down her back hungrily, tugging her closer and closer to him, while her hands knotted themselves in his hair, holding him so that he could not help but kiss her long and deep as their lips parted and their tongues tangled. She was delicious, and she was his. Finally she was his. He broke their kiss and rested his forehead on hers. "You should not stay here until we are married." There was no way he was going to make it to the altar without anticipating his vows, if she remained under the same roof as him. As it was likely going to be a difficult battle during the day when she was visiting. "I was serious about never being parted from you again," she replied. "I am not leaving." "I do not trust myself," he admitted. "If we are alone—" She kissed his lips lightly, and he saw a spark of amusement in her eyes. "My mother does not trust you either, so she will also be staying here until we marry." Patrick groaned. He would have to speak to Philip to see how quickly a license could be readied and arrangements could be made. "She is not here now. Amanda said suggestively, although there are footmen present, so do not do more than kiss me. He bent his head to capture her lips again, and kissed her to the edge of his resolve. Then, once again, he rested his forehead against hers. "We should speak with Mrs. White," Amanda said, "and Philip and his brother Marcus are bringing some greenery, boughs and such. We intended to keep them outside the servants' entrance until next week, when we will shake the snow off them and place a few around the sitting room and dining room." She wrapped her arm around his and laid her head against his shoulder as they moved away from the window. "I know it is not proper to be too festive, but I think it is what your mother would have wanted. She did so love Christmas." "Oh!" Her head popped up. "We must also get a Yule log." He chuckled. "We will do all of those things." He stopped at the table. "But not until you have eaten, as per Mrs. White's orders." He kissed her forehead and then held her chair for her. "I shall only eat if you do." She wrinkled her nose as she tasted her tea. "We shall need fresh cups. It has grown cold." Patrick motioned to one of the footmen who was still standing at his post. Then he moved his things to the head of the table, the proper place for the master of Ashmore to take, before tucking himself into his chair and enjoying the most wonderful breakfast he had ever tasted, as he listened to Amanda tell him story upon story about all that had happened in Derbyshire while he had been gone. He was home, never to leave again. He was exactly where he was meant to be, here, with her, until the frost fairies never returned to paint another window pane in winter, or perhaps even longer. This has been Frosted Windowpanes, a Nature's Fury and Delights novelette, written by Leenie Brown, narrated by Christopher, an authorised voice replica. The 2018 copyright for Frosted Windowpanes is held by Leenie Brown. All rights reserved.